If you don't have an edge in the markets, you won't be able to make consistent profits. I made over 6 figures just being able to identify relative strength and weakness on a daily basis. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can identify relative strength and weakness and how you can use it to make consistent profits in the market. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about relative strength and relative weakness. I feel like a lot of people do not talk about what this is. How can we use this concept in combination with our actual strategy to give us a higher probability setup, right? This concept is fairly simple to understand, but it's not really well talked about. I don't know why it is, but in today's video, I'm going to show you guys exactly what you guys have to look for. So let's get straight into it. So what is relative strength and relative weakness? So essentially what relative strength and relative weakness is comparing a stock or instrument in relation to the market as a whole. So example of this is when you're trading tech stocks, right? You want to be comparing it to the NASDAQ. So if you're trading Tesla, you want to be comparing it to the QQQ because Tesla trades underneath the QQQ and the NASDAQ. If we're using Tesla as an example, we want to know if it is relatively strong or relatively weak when comparing it to the NASDAQ. This allows us to give an extra added confirmation and to potentially give us an extra edge in our trading, which will allow us to make more money in the market. So why do we use relative strength and weakness? So when we're trading momentums, what we want to do is trade what's relatively strong or weak compared to the markets. So if the market is in an uptrend, what we want to do is look for strong names to long towards the upside. And when we're in a downtrend, what we want to do is look for those relatively weak names to short towards the downside. The reason being is because these names that are relatively strong in comparison to the market usually have the best momentum and the best risk reward ratio, because it has the most volume and most volatility and liquidity. We want to be looking at these relatively strong names when the market is in an uptrend. So how do we use relative strength and relative weakness? So we use relative strength and weakness in combination with our strategy. Relative strength and relative weakness by itself is just a concept. You could look to trade relative strength and relative weakness by itself, but it works the best in combination with our strategy. So if you trade support and resistance, the break and retest, or smart money concepts, being able to identify if something's relatively weak or relatively strong in combination with our strategy. So when we're trading tech names, we want to have the QQQ chart pulled up right beside the actual stock that we're trading to gauge the relative strength or weakness intraday. So right here, as an example, you can see that right here, the left-hand side we have the QQQ, and on the right hand side I have Tesla. When we have these two stocks pulled up beside each other, so we can look at the chart side by side and we can gauge whether Tesla is relatively strong or weak intraday compared to the QQQs. So this can give us a potential edge in the markets to allow us to identify high probability versus low probability setup. So without further ado, let's get straight into the examples that I have for us today. So right here is a great example of relative strength. When you're comparing right here on the right hand side, this is the NVDA weekly chart, and this is the QQQ weekly chart as well on the left hand side, right? You can see in the past a year and a half, right, we have been so relatively strong on the NVDA that if you were to look for longs every single day, you would have most likely made money in the past year and a half. So back here all the way in October 22nd, you can see that NVDA ended up making a low, right? So if you mark out both of these at the exact same time, you can see that right here, right? There's no really relative strength. Both these names were heading towards the downside, but you can see how strong once it made this low, NVIDIA moved all the way back towards the upside, right? So if we mark out this key pivot level on NVIDIA, which is at all-time highs level, and mark out the key pivot level on the QQQ, which is the all-time highs level. So if we mark this out, right, back in May 2023, this is when NVIDIA made an all-time highs push. If we mark out the exact same time when the Qs were at, you can see that May 2023, right? You can see that the Qs were all the way down here at 348. It was very far away from the all-time highs level at the exact same time. But you can see that NVIDIA ended up making an all-time highs push way back here. So you can see that this leg up was very relatively strong compared to the Qs, right? The Qs, right, pushed down one more time and then it started making its way back towards the upside, right? It just took out this key liquidity level, but you can see at the exact same time, right, Qs were already at all-time highs. So you know this ticker is very relatively strong. And then fast forward to a couple months ago, you can see that the Qs finally hit that all-time highs level back a month ago. And you can see that if you're looking at NVDA, right, in the past month, NVDA has just absolutely rocketed towards the upside. I told my group back all the way in January at the start of the year, I said NVDA looks so good for upside and that it's very relatively strong. You do not want to short this name. You really want to be looking for longs towards upside. And you can see if you just compare the two daily charts in the past month and a half, that NVIDIA has been an absolute rocket towards the upside. If you have looked to long NVIDIA every single day, you would have made money 9 out of 10 times. And this is just an example right here. If you look at the two charts, you can clearly see that it's popping out to you, right? The relative strength on this daily chart is undeniable. Everyone can see how strong NVIDIA is compared to the general market. And this is what I talk about when you're looking at relative strength. You want to be in an uptrend. You want to look at the names that are the most relatively strong, because you can expect those names to get bought up towards the upside. Any pullbacks in the market, you can expect NVIDIA to stay strong. You can see right here on the January the 31st, when the market had a pullback here, you can see right here at the exact same time, NVIDIA, it did not have a pullback whatsoever. You can see that NVIDIA stayed strong and absolutely launched towards the upside. Once the Qs had a small bounce, NVIDIA just absolutely rocketed towards the upside where it is right now. And that's why you want to be looking at these relatively strong names in an uptrend, because these are the ones that are going to have the most momentum, and these are the ones that everyone's going to be looking to buy pullbacks towards the upside. So with this being said, now I'm going to be going on to some examples that I took in real time. So let's get right into it. So right here, I'm on my first example of the day. This is on Tesla. The chart, we're strictly just going to be looking at intraday price action. This is without higher time frame bias. So obviously, if you have a higher time frame bias in mind, with combination of the intraday relative strength and weakness, you're gonna have such a better trade idea. But right now, we're strictly just going to be looking at the concept of intraday relative strength and weakness, and we're gonna be looking at how we can use it without a higher time frame bias. So currently, you can see that both these charts, right, we're at market open here on Tesla. The first 10 minutes on Tesla compared to the first 5 minutes on Qs, right? You can see it's already trying to head towards the downside, right? If you look on the 1 minute charts right here, so you can see within the first 10 minutes on Tesla, Tesla's on the right hand side, Qs are on the left hand side. You can already see that we're relatively weak compared to the Qs on Tesla, right? Basically, the Qs just made a fresh low underneath the opening candle print. You can already see that the opening candle print on Tesla was all the way back at 184, and you can already see we're pushing down after retesting this level towards the downside. So just by basing off this information right here, we're going to be wanting to short Tesla. If we had a thesis that the market wants to head lower, we're going to be looking to short Tesla because it's already relatively weak. So we keep playing the tape here. You can see that Tesla is starting to respect PDA arrays, right? You can see it's starting to respect this fair value gap. That's where I ended up taking puts towards the downside. I ended up taking the first short towards the downside with just a stop or break above this, and targets right here is based off of the higher time frame levels. So you can see my first target was previous low of day, and my second target was this 180 level on the higher time frames. You can see that the Qs start to push up, right? It's really just ranging, and Tesla at the exact same time. You can see that Tesla came back up inside the PDA arrays, right? It came back up inside this fair value gap, but you can see it wicked above this fair value gap, but never closed below it. So you know that it's still bearish since it's starting to respect PDA arrays. The stop loss has been not touched. That's why it's a break above this level, right? You want to really see a close below this level. That's when you know it's still bearish. And you can see at the exact same time, if you compare these two charts, you can see that, right, the Qs are back inside this range that it's formed. A Tesla is still staying heavy, so you know you're in a very good position. We keep playing the tape here. Qs end up dropping down. That allows it to push Tesla down towards the downside. I ended up taking my first partial right here. But the reason I still hold majority of my target is because we do have a higher time frame thesis towards the downside, which is that 180 level on the higher time frames. And you can see as we keep playing the tape, right, the Qs end up bouncing here. Tesla ends up staying weak. You can kind of see what's happening right here. So at the exact same time, right at 10 o'clock hits, you can see that the Tesla is a very clear downtrend on the 1 minute time frame. Qs is a little bit choppy, but it's still trying to make its way down. So that's why you want to be looking for this name to short, because it's relatively weak compared to the market. As you keep playing the tape here, you can see that the Qs are essentially just ranging, and Tesla just absolutely melts towards the downside. and it ends up hitting our 180 profit target while the Q methodically makes its way down. So as you can see right here, right, the Qs started to spill towards the downside, but Tesla was the leader towards the downside. That's why you want to look for these relatively weak names. So if you have a bearish thesis, you want to be looking for a Tesla short towards the downside. So this was an absolutely beautiful trade, and you can see that Tesla absolutely just melted towards the downside. So I ended up being able to identify this in real time with the Discord group, and we ended up hitting this trade towards the downside. So now I'm going to be going on to the second example I have for the day. So right here, I'm on my second example of the day. It's also on Tesla as well. So first, what we want to do is head on to the higher time frames. Right here, you can see on Tesla, right, higher time frames, it looks pretty good for upside. This is the key level I have marked out, which is this 190.60 level. If you go into the 5-minute time frame, you can see how well it's respecting. It came back down, retested it. So this is really going to be the level I'm going to be looking at coming into the market. So if we go into the 1-minute time frame here, we'll wait to see what happens during market open. So right here, you can see we're right at market open now. We're right here on Tesla, right? The market just opened below our 190.60 level, and the QQQ right here is just opening up here as well. We'll play the tape. You can see the first minute candle on QQQ dropped. We'll see what happens, right? If we compare the first two candles compared to the QQQ versus Tesla, you can see that 190.60 was the key level on the higher time frames, right? So you can see if you're comparing the first two candles on Tesla compared to the Qs, you can see that Tesla in the second candle, right, very bullish candle, we ended up getting above our 190.60 level. So I'm going to be looking for calls anywhere above 190.60 as long as we can stay relatively strong towards the upside. So if we play the tape, you can see that the Qs ended up trying to head lower, right? Tesla on the second candle, we ended up holding, right? You can see on the second candle, we ended up wicking below our key level. We ended up closing a body below 190.60. So that's where I ended up getting long towards the upside. This was also in combination with the opening drive play, a quick 1-minute retest towards the upside. And my targets really here was this gap level and also this 190.63, right? If we go into the 1 hour chart, my next profit target was also at 192. So as we play the tape here, you can see if we look at the two charts, right, the QQQ essentially is consolidating for the first 5 minutes, and Tesla absolutely starts launching towards the upside. So you know this stock is already relatively strong on the day, right? Based off of the first 5 minutes, you can see that Tesla starts pushing towards the upside. It is relatively strong, right? So if the QQQ starts to end up going back up for a reversal, you know that the Tesla is most likely going to launch towards the upside because it's relatively strong. So Tesla is the leader towards the upside. So if the market wants to head back up towards the upside, Tesla is most likely going to launch higher. So essentially based off of the first 5 minutes, you know that if the Qs end up reversing back towards the upside, Tesla is most likely going to end up launching higher as well. So as we play the tape here, you can see that the Qs, once it starts getting back up towards the upside at 9:45, you can see that Tesla ends up just moving higher and gravitating higher towards the upside. And if you look at these two charts, you can see that Tesla is clearly relatively strong compared to the QQQ on the day, right? So if you're looking for long positions, you want to be in a stock that's relatively strong. And this is exactly what Tesla is. You can see the Q start to make its way back up towards the upside, and that allows Tesla to gravitate towards that final profit target, which is this 194 level on the higher time frames. And you can see as soon as it touches that 194, the final profit target, it ends up having a reversal. So now I'm going to be going on to my final example that I have for the day. So now I'm on my final example of the day. It is also on Tesla as well. And we're strictly just going to be looking at intraday timeframes, right? Without any having a higher time frame bias. So right here, I have the first 15 minutes played out on the Tesla and the Qs. And you can see right here, we're both in a downtrend, right? So right here, you can play the first 15 minutes out. There's not really a clear relative strength or weakness on Tesla in the first 15 minutes. But as you can see right here, right, the Qs end up bouncing towards the upside. So this would mean that in theory, Tesla should bounce with the Qs back towards the upside, but you can see within the next 5 minutes that Tesla stays heavy, right? Tesla ends up holding these lows, right? So as you can see, Tesla ends up staying heavy towards the downside. As the Qs start pushing back up towards the downside, Tesla starts to stay heavy. So this is a name that you can look to short towards the downside. So as you can see right here, the Qs push up, Tesla stays heavy, and you can look at the clear discrepancy between both these two names. So by basing off this information, right, you want to be looking for Tesla shorts towards the downside as the Qs are pushing up. So you understand that Tesla is relatively weak compared to the market. So if you have a bearish thesis, you want to be looking for shorts on Tesla. So based off of this information, you could have easily looked to short Tesla towards the downside using this as a scalp opportunity. And you can see right here, as the Q started pushing back towards low of day, Tesla was the leader towards the downside. So you would have been looking for this name to short towards the downside. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to drop me a like and subscribe. If you guys do have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.